Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the cosmos to bust some of the most common space myths about planets. You know, those things you hear whispered at stargazing parties or maybe even learn back in grade school. We think we've got the solar system all figured out, right? Well, the universe loves to throw curveballs, and sometimes what we think we know about planets is just plain wrong. You've probably heard a few of these myths yourselves, but what if I told you they're completely wrong? Get ready to have your mind blown wide open, because today we're separating cosmic fact from science fiction. Let's get started. All right, let's address the elephant in the solar system. Everyone thinks Mercury's scorching because it's close to the sun. Makes sense, right? Closer to the heat source, hotter the planet. Only the universe loves to mess with our intuition. Mercury gets hot during the day, reaching 800 degrees Fahrenheit. But with no atmosphere, it gets freezing at night, minus 290 degrees. Earth's atmosphere traps heat, but Mercury's doesn't. So, while Mercury bakes in the day, it freezes at night. That's a swing of over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That is insane. Let's move on to another celestial celebrity, Saturn. It's the planet that everyone pictures with those majestic rings, right? Like a giant disco ball in the blackness of space. And yeah, Saturn's rings are absolutely stunning, a dazzling display of ice and rock particles. But here's the cosmic truth bomb. Saturn isn't the only planet in our solar system with a set of rings. It's like finding out your friend's vintage jacket isn't one of a kind after all. It turns out Jupiter, Uranus and Neptune have rings too. They're just not as big, bright or as easily visible as Saturn's. Jupiter's rings, for example, are made mostly of dust, which explains why they're so faint. They're like those dusty ceiling fans you never get around to cleaning. You know they're there, but you can't quite make out the details. Uranus and Neptune's rings are also fainter and less prominent than Saturn's. They're made up of darker materials, which makes them harder to spot. It's kind of like trying to find your black cat in a coal cellar. Tricky, but not impossible. So, why does Saturn get all the attention for its rings? Well, it comes down to visibility. Saturn's rings are made of ice, which reflects a lot of sunlight, making them appear much brighter than the other planets' rings. Plus, Saturn's rings are much larger and more complex, with multiple gaps and divisions that make them even more visually stunning. Now let's journey to our next-door neighbor Mars, the red planet. When you picture Mars, you probably envision a desolate, rusty red desert, right? A barren wasteland where nothing could possibly survive. Well, hold on to your helmets, folks, because Mars might be holding on to more secrets than we thought. While it's true that Mars today looks like a pretty harsh place, scientists have found compelling evidence that Mars wasn't always the dry, dusty planet we see today. In fact, there's strong evidence to suggest that Mars was once a much warmer and wetter planet with rivers, lakes, and maybe even oceans. Imagine that. Ancient Martian beaches, maybe even Martian surfers catching waves. Okay, maybe I'm getting carried away, but you have to admit, the possibility is exciting. So where did all the water go? Well, over billions of years, Mars lost much of its atmosphere due to its weak gravity. Without that protective blanket, the Martian surface water evaporated into space, leaving behind the dry, dusty landscape we see today. But here's the kicker. Scientists believe that some of that water is still around, hidden beneath the Martian surface in the form of ice. And not just a little bit of ice, we're talking about enough water ice to cover the entire planet in an ocean hundreds of feet deep. And that's not all. In recent years, scientists have detected signs of the liquid water flowing on Mars's surface, albeit in small amounts and for short periods. These flows, called recurring slope lineae, appear as dark streaks on Martian slopes during the warmer months. While the exact nature of these flows is still being debated, their presence suggests that liquid water might still exist on Mars today. And finally, let's talk about Pluto. Pluto, the celestial underdog, the planet that was demoted to dwarf planet status back in 2006, I know. I know it still stings for some of us, but just because Pluto got reclassified doesn't mean it's any less fascinating a world. In fact, Pluto is a cosmic overachiever, full of surprises and scientific intrigue. First of all, let's address the elephant in the room, or should I say the dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt. Just because Pluto is now classified as a dwarf planet doesn't mean it's not a planet at all. It's still a round object orbiting the sun, and it's still a fascinating world in its own right. It's like saying a Chihuahua isn't a dog because it's small, it's still a dog. Just a smaller breed with its own unique characteristics. And speaking of unique, Pluto has a lot to offer. For starters, it has a heart-shaped glacier. I mean, how cool is that? This glacier, named Sputnik Planitia, is actually a giant nitrogen ice plain that's constantly reshaping itself due to Pluto's unusual seasons. And speaking of seasons, Pluto's are extreme, to say the least. A year on, Pluto lasts 248 Earth years, and during that time, its surface temperature can fluctuate wildly from minus 375 degrees Fahrenheit to minus 396 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold enough to freeze nitrogen, which is why Pluto's atmosphere actually freezes and falls to the ground during its winter. So, while Pluto might not be a major planet anymore, it's still a fascinating and complex world that's full of surprises. It's a reminder that the universe is full of incredible diversity and that there's always something new to discover, even in the most unexpected places. So there you have it. 4 space myths busted. The universe is full of surprises and there's always more to learn. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more cosmic content. Let me know in the comments which myth surprised you the most. Until next time, keep looking up at the stars, and do not forget to subscribe to this channel.